want to do is just talk about the thing that is in your skull, that lovely brain of yours. It is designed and created to be incredibly complex. And the way that God created our brains is through electrical wiring. So when we see something or take something in sensually, so we take things in through the sense of vision or smell or hearing, we then create pathways in the brain by sending electrical impulses from one neuron to another. Make sense? So you're creating these grooves in your brain. So I'm guessing that if you are studying at the library and you need to get back to your dorm, you probably have a way that you walk back to your dorm every time, right? This is kind of like autopilot. You just walk that way to your dorm. You don't come out of the library every time and go like, I think I would like to walk a different way and experience a different part of campus. Right? Okay, you all are going to have to get a lot more responsive or you're going to be asleep in 2 seconds. What our brains do is that deep, worn pathway. We see something, it makes us think a certain thing, or it stimulates us in a certain way, and it creates these deep pathways, deep grooves in the brain that are really easy to fall into. So if we are a person, I'll get there. But what I want to help you think about today is the fact that you have more than likely already wired your brain in some ways that leave you to have proclivities to kind of fall into certain deep grooves. Now, let me tell you, if you talk to neurologists, there are 4 basic. I want to show you guys. Someone at Chapel made me a thumb splint. Here, I'm wearing it for my texting thumb splint. So I love it, and thank you so much for making that for me, and I'm going to take it off for just a moment. All right, 4 areas of the brain. We have the left brain and the right brain. These you probably have heard a lot about, right? The left brain is very linear, it's logical, it's linguistic. It loves that I have just used 4 L's in a row. It is just very This is the part of your brain that is, just is like on fire during math class. How many of you kind of love math class and love, okay, all right. So that is the left brain. The left brain is very just so. The right brain tends to be much more abstract, creative, pre-verbal, non-verbal, artistic. It's kind of the part of your brain that just is, really gets fired up by maybe poetry or art. It's much more expansive. So we've got and everybody has all 4 of these regions, I hope, unless you've had some kind of brain surgery and had something removed, which then I'm very sorry. Okay, so we are going to right now act out the left and the right brain. And I know this is like, you guys are in college and you are way too cool for school, but you just have to play along with me here a little bit. So the left brain, you guys are the left brain, like from here over. And the left brain, if I ask the left brain to stand up and sit down, how might it do that as its linear logical self? Show me. You would just stand up, and then you would sit down. And then you would stand up, and then you would sit down. Okay, the right brain has no use for this like up and down action. That is just like ridiculousness. I would like the right brain to stand up and sit down as jellyfish, please. So here we go. Jellyfish standing up and sitting down. Woo! Sorry, All right, now, here's the deal. If you are a person who tends toward logical, linear, you like that information, you like things concrete, you just, A is before B every single time. Like one time when I said I was angry, you yelled at me, so I'm never going to say I'm angry again because you might yell at me, because that's the linear logical self. If you are that kind of person, whenever anybody says stand up, sit down, you stand up and sit down like that. It has a proclivity to go to the right. When somebody says stand up and sit down, you're going to jellyfish. Now, if you've got a right brain and a left brain person trying to understand the same conversation, do you hear or see how that would be different, right? Or if you are a right brain person sitting in a math class, what happens? Your mind is wandering, you're falling asleep, you want to shoot yourself. That would be me. It just does not feel like a right fit. It feels like wearing the wrong, have you ever woken up and like put on your roommate's shoes instead of your own? It's like putting on the wrong pair of shoes. It just doesn't quite fit. Well, if you are a right brain person and you grew up with left brain parents, Maybe you have never even been exposed to the kind of creativity and thinking that is expansive and creative that would just turn you on. Or if you're a left brain person and you were raised by a wacky right brain mom like me, you would feel very left wanting. I would never give you enough puzzles or, problems to solve because I'd just be kind of constantly going, how do you feel, honey? How does that really feel? We have both though, and so frequently. Can you guys identify with this? How the fit and how where you have been in your life shapes how you are shaping your brain, which might not be the way God intended your brain in particular to be shaped. Now, there are two other ways of separating out the brain that neurologists are starting to talk about a lot more now. And I like to use the elementary school words. We're going to use a lot of elementary school words today because then you'll likely remember them. There is the upstairs brain and there is the downstairs brain. Now, if you think about a beach house, when you go into the downstairs of a beach house, that's usually where all the really practical stuff is, right? The bathroom, the laundry room, the kitchen. That's the part of the brain that is responsible for all the basic stuff. It's like responsible for walking. It's responsible for coordination. It's impulsive. So when somebody startles you, it's what makes you go, ah! It's the kind of just the basic function. It's the part that tells you need to eat when you need to eat, you need to sleep when you need to sleep, and you should all pay better attention to that part, by the way. And then there's the upstairs brain. The upstairs brain is this expansive self. Think about the beach house, the upstairs view that's like a room with all windows. The upstairs brain is forward thinking. It thinks ahead. It gives you perspective. It adds this level of complexity. When you're upstairs, you can see water and sand, so you can see it's the part that really gives you access to much more. Now, again, there are different times in your life. You guys are in a period of time right now developmentally where you are actually, the firing in the upstairs part of your brain is crazy. You guys are wiring all the circuitry right now for responsibility, self-control, emotional regulation. And that's why when you are only doing that through this, you're doing it in these very little these little pathways, and you're missing this whole huge, rich complexity. Okay, we're going to be the upstairs and the downstairs brain like we were the right and the left. So the upstairs brain, you're going to have ideas when I tell you to be the brain. So an idea, what is that? I think a good representation of an idea is ping. It's like a little light bulb going on, right? Now the downstairs brain, you guys are just busy burping and farting because it's the impulsive part. So ready? Everybody be upstairs or downstairs. Go. No, downstairs got to be burping and farting. Oh, you guys. These, again, think about it. If you have an overactive downstairs brain, you have not done anything to develop this upper part of the brain, which, by the way, I will tell you, most screen forms of stimulation miss and completely bypass this region of the brain. So basically, people always come up to me at talks and say, well, I have read research that playing video games actually increases the skill of certain professions. Well, let me tell you what those professions are. Surgeons and mathematicians. Now, a whole world full of surgeons and mathematicians would not be a world in which I would want to exist. The only thing that those games do is they help visual acuity, they help with scanning the environment, they help with quick reflexes. They are not helping develop the higher upstairs brain function that we need. Things like empathy, self-control, planning ahead, self-soothing. Does this make sense? So, if I asked you right now, I'm not going to ask you to yell it out, but if I asked you, could you kind of identify, just with that very sketchy basic information, where your dominant functioning is? Left, right, up, down? Can you kind of get a feel of it? Show me with a nod of the head that you're awake if you are, and if you're asleep, wake up. Okay, can you kind of get a sense of that? Here's what we want. God intended all four of those areas of the brain to be crazy stimulated all the time. He wanted your brain to work in such a way that you take a different path home every time because there's something new to see every time. And yet when we just do the same thing day after day after day after day, we sit in class and then we go play video games or we, whatever it is, or we spend all our time on Facebook or Pinterest, we are severely limiting the capacity of our brains. And not only that, but we are diminishing a sense of satisfaction in life, because research, the brain scans of individuals who have firing in all regions of the brain are individuals who are happier. They are more content. And guess what? They also learn better. So this would mean that if you're a right brain person sitting in a math class, you've got to find some ways of making math right brain in order to enjoy it or learn anything from it. Or if you are a left brain person sitting in an art class, you have got to find some ways of making that appeal to your left brain in order to balance out the flow. Does that make sense? Do you guys kind of get that? And there are all kinds of amazing ways you can do this. I spoke at a high school camp recently, and my daughter happened to be there, and she called me not long ago, and she and her friend who were there were having a discussion, and they just couldn't understand each other, and she called and she said, "It was so cool. Sam just took out a piece of paper and drew, okay, so Kaya, this is your right brain not getting my left brain. So how can we cross brains?" And that's the thing, if you guys start thinking about how you can access not only the parts of your own brain that you need to stretch, but stretching into others, it really will enhance your relationships. Okay, the other thing that I think, okay, are you tracking with me? Are we awake? Do we need to do head, shoulders, knees, and toes? No? Okay. Yes, we do need to do heads. Oh, we're good. Okay, I was going to do head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Is there more pizza yet, Matthew? Yes? No, not yet. Okay. All right. The other thing that I feel is really profound. I am just really hate standing still. Is when individuals can kind of get a sense of the way in which they best experience life, or the route through which they are kind of what research says, the way in which they are intelligent. So how many of you have heard about multiple intelligences? Okay, when I started studying multiple intelligences, there were seven kinds of, and I'm going to call them smarts today just because that's a little easier to say than intelligences. So there were 7 kinds of smart. Research now is bearing out that there are 9 kinds of ways of being in the world that kind of light people up or turn them on. Now, all of us have all 9 kinds of smart. But the problem is our schools in America tend to teach to about 2 of those kinds of smarts. They use words and numbers. And then the other 7 kinds hardly ever get spoken to, and they certainly don't get developed or hit on in the same way. And I don't mean hit on in the way that it sounds. Anyway, you all are so quiet. It makes me seem so much more loud and obnoxious. Anyway, part of what I am passionate about is helping people realize that there are some ways in which you might experience life that, again, you haven't yet experienced. And so you tend to gravitate toward that which you know, screens, to have stimulation or to be entertained. And you may be missing out on that which God intended for you. I part of what I do every week is I have a private practice, and I can't tell you how many picture smart people and music smart people. They come and they're in therapy with me as young adults, and they'll say things like, "Man, I grew up in a house where all I ever heard was vineyard worship music. And now that you are like giving me world music or complicated music to listen to, my mind is blown, and I'm just like, I can't stop thinking about it." Or the same thing happens with art. They'll say, the only art I ever saw was Thomas Kincaid, which that's fine. However, it's also important to stimulate and get some complexity in the system, which makes you come alive. So I'm just going to quickly move through the 9 kinds of smart. And this is where ideally I would have screens and I could show you all kinds of video clips. But there are all kinds of resources on my website about how to develop and lean into the different kinds of smart that you can check out. And I would just encourage you all to challenge yourself to try some of these things. If you are not a word smart person, and the only way you've ever been taught to experience God is through scripture and prayer with words, you are probably dying on the vine, and there is probably very little about God that is compelling to you. Make sense? If you are a body smart person, probably no one has ever helped you know how to pray in a way that taps into your body smartness. There's more pizza, by the way. All right, the first kind of smart we're going to talk about is word smart, and that is, it's linguist smart if you really want to get technical, but the word smart person is really just so fortunate in the Western culture as it is right now. The word smart person learns through the spoken and written word. This is a person who goes to a lecture and remembers everything, or reads a chapter and remembers everything, has to hardly do any studying beyond just seeing and hearing the words. These guys oftentimes have a narration that goes through their head all day long. Any of you identify with that? Like there's this kind of internal narrator that's telling the story of your life. Anybody ever picture who they want that to be? Like the voice, your narrator? I want Liam Neeson. Ooh, that would be nice. Okay, yeah, excellent. So these are word smart folks. The written and spoken word just brings these people to life. These guys either tend to use a lot of language or they use very little language very well. People who are word smart people in history are people like Shakespeare, but the other group of word smart folks that we don't tend to think about are comedians, people who can use language to get a very specific response and very effectively. If you are word smart, you will love storytelling. You will also love to talk. I have a word smart husband, and what I do for a profession is listen. And when I get home at the end of the day, I am so listened out, and he is so ready to talk. Word smart people need people to listen, and then they also need people to listen to. If you are a word smart person, there is a very good chance that you feel bored in your classes. Anybody identify with that? Because your reading is oftentimes your Disneyland, and the reading that you are assigned is not Disneyland-esque for you. So I challenge you, if you are a word smart person, to read up and read out. So read outside of your comfort zone. Get into areas that are new. Find words. You guys are going to love word puzzles. You are going to love kind of figuring out language and vocabulary. And also, a great tool for word smart people in dealing with emotional difficulties is narrating. So if you are a word smart person and you are experiencing anxiety, it can actually help to take on the voice of Liam Neeson and narrate through an anxious moment. Or just give yourself the benefit of words to help you with emotional situations. If you're a word smart person right now, you could write a haiku just like that. And normally I would ask you to do that, but we're, at a lunch and we don't have paper, so I'm not going to ask you to haiku. All right, the next kind of smart we're going to talk about is math smart. These guys learn through reasoning and problem solving. A math smart person is just a critical thinker, sometimes emphasis on the word critical. Because in a math smart person's mind, everything goes just like this. So when I ask you to do something and you nod, that means you will do it, and then it will be done, and then we'll be finished. If you are asked by a math smart person to do something and you don't do it, they do not understand or really care about the emotional reasons why you didn't. They just have this very black and white 1, 2, 3 ABC system. Make sense? You guys, can you identify who these math smart people are in your life? And again, we all have all 9 of them, but by the time you are your age, college students, usually you have about 2 ways that have floated to the surface as the way in which you feel most alive, most energized, you most effectively take information in. Math smart folks love logically and sequenced delivery of information. So if you are a math smart person and you are in a class with a professor who is not math smart, you're going to be going out of your mind. You're sitting there going like, that does not make an outline. That is the worst teaching method I have ever heard. And it's going to be hard for you to attend to the content because it's going to be presented in such a frustrating way to you. It really, really is. Math smart folks are folks like Einstein, folks who are very, very brilliant, but sometimes have the people skills of a fish. Because they are not able to be flexible in such a way that allows them, at least naturally, that allows them to understand ways of being that aren't their own. If you are a math smart person, things that are going to bring you to life. So for instance, in prayer, for math smart folks, one of my favorite things to do is to set up worship experiences where all the kinds of smarts are represented. And I will bring pattern blocks. Do you guys remember like in second grade when you had little shape blocks that you counted and you made into patterns and things like that? Shape blocks or patterns or Legos are fantastic prayer tools for math smart people because you start with a central shape and then you build in around it, and it helps you have a focus for your energies, and it helps you, gives you something to do that is logical and sequential, and it can really be a fantastic prayer tool. Mandalas, you can print prayer mandalas that are like coloring pages where, again, you start with this central concept. Maybe it's the sovereignty of God, or maybe it's grace, or maybe it's just being dependent on God, and then you color out from there. But these kinds of things can bring it to life. Math smart people are going to love problem solving tasks. I would encourage you, if you're trying to break free of math smart people, gravitate towards screens a lot. Get a basic Rubik's Cube. Get a handheld game of another kind that's not screen-based. I'm going to have a bunch of them tomorrow at the fire pit. Try things that are actually moving your body and forcing yourself to get those math smart highs away from screens. You guys are going to love comparing and contrasting tasks. You're going to walk into a room and know how many ceiling panels exist on the above you, and you're also going to be very distracted if the environment isn't kind of pristine frequently. And so to know that, you guys are going to gravitate maybe toward music theory and percussion. You're also going to love justice. You may need to have your friends help you temper that with some grace, but you will love justice. And know that about yourself. You're going to tend to gravitate toward the justice parts of God and maybe miss some of the more gracious and loving parts of God. Questions? Okay, we're going to see if there's any math smart people. If I gave you, so close your eyes and imagine this list of numbers. I'm going to give you a blank, and then I want you to tell me what the blank is. 11, 12, 14, blank, 26, 42. When you have it, let me know. Do you have it? Okay. 11, 12, 14, blank, 26, 42. Anybody got it? Yeah. 18. That is a math smart person. I have no idea why. I've been using that example for 7 years. I still don't know why. But it's 18. And if you want to know, ask this wonderful person back there in the green. All right. Third kind of smart, picture smarts. Here is the deal with picture smart people. Picture smart people organize and view the world in images, literally. So if you ask a picture smart person, how do you feel today? They'll say, I feel like the Empire State Building, or I feel yellow. They use images to describe internal experiences. These guys notice color and line. They will notice subtle differences about things in a room. They are also highly distracted. In a classroom or in a dorm room, if there are a lot of distractions, a picture smart person is going to be so distracted by that they won't be able to focus. These are also people who sometimes have a hard time in worship if they're in either a really bland church setting, or if they're in a church setting that just feels not visually or aesthetically compelling. They will struggle. These are people who might be very benefited by the help of something like a visual image to use to help them focus during their prayer. Those could be anything from photographs to icons to whatever, but just images that help them focus, that give their visual field something that just lights them up. Candles can be great for these folks because they can watch the flame and it just keeps them engaged and alive. People like Da Vinci were definitely picture smart people that he had to draw everything ahead of time. Any of you seen the Lion King musical? Julie Taymor, who did the design and the costumes for that, she is a very picture smart person. Picture smart people just have an ability to make things happen visually that you cannot imagine. Sometimes picture smart people, if they have been raised, let's say, by mathematicians or people who don't get it, get really frustrated when they're young, and by the time they're your age, the picture smartness has been beaten out of them because they have these images in their mind that they would love to be able to create, but they don't have the skill to make it happen on paper. Any of you had this experience? It's so frustrating, isn't it? And so you guys need the opportunity to create all along and to make messes and to be given opportunities to create in different ways, and also given some things like maybe if that is you and you think, man, I might kind of have some picture smartness in me. Maybe you just need a basic drawing class to help give you the confidence to get started expressing yourself in those ways. You guys will need to make prayer and to make your contemplative pausing time work. You will need things like sketchbooks, like Play-Doh. Literally, I'm not kidding. I just met with Residence Life staff and we had Play-Doh. You know, you guys need those pipe cleaners we had this morning, but you need to be creating things in order to stay focused and to feel fully alive. Got it? Questions? Awake? Okay. Woo! All right. I would also encourage, if you are picture smart, to have stuff for creation out and about. Don't make it like a big, huge thing where you have to get out the paint and get out the pencil. Just get Crayola-colored pencils and white printer paper and start doodling. I mean, you know, you need that to be engaged. Okay, body smart. Body smart people. These are the people where you're sitting somewhere near them and like all of a sudden you realize that they are nearly on your lap. You guys have these people in your life? They just kind of get closer and closer and closer until they are just like, you know, they have zero personal space bubble. You go into stores with body smart people and they want to touch and feel everything. They just have to feel it. They'll touch your hair. They'll touch whatever or lack thereof. They'll just, you know, they just want to touch things. They also need to move around while they're learning. Body smart people die in a traditional classroom. These guys oftentimes need to be able to learn, or they learn by moving their bodies. These are also folks who oftentimes have really excellent coordination. Now that doesn't always look like being part of a sports team, but they have unique ways of using their bodies to communicate things, like Cirque du Soleil performers or you know, other people who can manipulate and coordinate their body in interesting ways. The most body smart person I have ever encountered, I mean, I haven't encountered him personally, but is Michael Phelps. You know, he knows the exact torque of his hands when they are a certain, I don't even know how to use the terminology. He knows how many, you know, calories to eat that makes him whatever buoyancy in the water. He just knows how to use his body in amazing ways. Now, most of us do not take that superpower of body smartness and use it for good. Oftentimes, we use it in ways that end up hurting us, because body smart folks are also folks who are going to crave physical stimulation. You guys are going to crave sensual stimulation. So best be making sure you are getting that in ways that are edifying and in ways that build you up, because if you aren't, you're going to highly gravitate toward ways that hurt you, sexual promiscuity, all kinds of things that just will end up hurting you. So you need to, maybe even more than other kinds of smarts, make sure that you are indulging your senses fully. Now, probably you haven't heard people at Biola say that a lot, but I mean it. We are sensual beings. God created us with senses, and especially if you are body smart, you need those to be stimulated. You need smells and you need sounds. You might need like exotic, like go onto iTunes, into the radio part over on the left, and listen to, the other day I was listening to Iranian pop music. Just literally stimulate yourself in a different way. Feel things, touch things, play with Play-Doh. Lay on the grass and really feel what it feels like. You guys are also going to need manipulatives during learning. I don't know if this has come down here, but in Portland now, at most university bookstores, they sell this stuff called Brilliant Putty. Have you guys seen that? It's these little tiny, they're like Play-Doh containers, and it's just this putty that you can play with. But it basically just keeps you focused by making sure that you have something in your hands at all time. You guys, if you're body smart, you also need movement breaks. And tonight and after dark, I'm going to actually give some examples of how body smart people can really harness that ability in worship and in prayer and in building the self. And so I hope you will come. But even things like, you know, praying with exercise bands, while you're using exercise bands, or while you're jumping rope. Anybody see Akeelah and the Bee, the movie Akeelah and the Bee? You know, she learns by jumping rope. These are all really, really powerful tools. Just for fun, if you have paper, body smart people are very good at this one skill that's kind of crazy. You take your pencil or your pen in your non-dominant hand, and with your dominant hand, make a fist and release it, and then sign your name with your non-dominant hand. I can't do it to save my soul, but body smart people can. Okay, next kind of smart. Does everybody need to stand up and sit down, or are we all awake? If you need to stand up and sit down, feel free. Science smart is also sometimes in the literature referred to as nature smart, but science smart folks, nature smart folks, are individuals who see the world in categories and classifications. They can also tend toward the critical sometimes because they can tend to say, my category is the best category and yours isn't, period. So these are folks who are really interested in cause and effect. They're really interested in hierarchies and how hierarchies happen. They are highly observant, so they will observe tiny differences in things and really pick up on them where you may not notice them at all. Nature smart or science smart people oftentimes have a really hard time being trapped indoors. They come to life when they are outside or where there is fresh air. These guys oftentimes also have a hard time with things like seasonal changes or light changes. They're just tapped in with nature in a different way. Bill Nye would be, a science smart person. So would Jane Goodall. And then I wish you could see, I'm going to actually turn my computer around. This is Josh McDowell's. He was asked, this is his definition of Jesus. Now, in 100,000 years, if someone asked me to define Jesus, I would not use a flow chart. But Josh McDowell, as a science smart person, uses a flow chart. I mean, and that's how science smart people work. So if you are trying, again, as a science smart person, to engage in quiet or pause or get away from screens, and you've never tapped into that part of you or found ways of doing that, it's going to be hard for you to attend. And so finding ways like making flow charts or doing your own little mini research can really be helpful to helping you attend. Also learning outside, getting outside for simple prayer and contemplation time, getting outside and leaving screens behind can be really, really meaningful. Okay. The next kinds of smart are ones that just don't get a whole lot of emphasis. And I find, especially for young adults, people who have these proclivities or propensities or where these are their major forms of smart have oftentimes never had it validated for them, literally. And maybe they don't even know. Maybe they have grown up feeling really like they didn't have much to offer in the world, and they certainly didn't have much to get out of or offer at school. But when they can own and kind of embody these forms of intelligence that they have been gifted with, suddenly life changes for them. First of those is the people smart person. In the literature, it's referred to as the interpersonally smart or interpersonal intelligence. These are people who learn through interactions with other people or through deep and meaningful interactions with the self and God. So it's all about the relationship for these guys. These guys value collaboration and cooperation. They are astute at understanding social dynamics. My son is here with me from George Fox, and I'm going to use him as an example. He is a people smart person, and in kindergarten, I asked him on his third day of school to tell me a little bit about his classmates, and I was expecting him to say, Allie has a Batman lunchbox, and, first grade or kindergarten, this is what you're thinking, right? And no, he said, Allie's really peace-loving, and John really is kind. So smart people tend to pick up on the temperament and the dynamics of people in their lives. These guys are highly effective communicators. The tricky thing is that a lot of times people who are people smart will feel like they are not, because oftentimes they are very, very actually introverted. So they are excellent with people, they understand people, they get the dynamics, but they are not always chatty Cathys or people who are constantly wanting to kind of be in a social sphere. This is a different dynamic. Does that make sense? So these people make fantastic therapists. They make fantastic attorneys. These are people who really understand dynamics, but may not be chatty. Examples of smart people are all around us in environments like this. An example of a person who is not people smart, I always love flashing this picture up. It is, the guy from The Office. He is not people smart. And here's the thing with people smart highs. If you are a people smart person, you have probably gotten in trouble a lot for talking in class. You have probably also been frustrated with group projects because you have found yourself being the person who gets everybody else going. Anybody identify with this? You probably feel like everybody else is shirking their responsibilities. If you are a people smart person on a team, you probably don't even care what the team is. You just love being on the team and you love being the encourager, but then you can also be very frustrated by the people who are on the team to win only. So the task for people smart people is to learn how to care for their own needs a little bit, and not only, like for those of you who are in chapel, people smart people can be especially at risk of looking outside of themselves to determine how they need to feel about themselves. Does that make sense? And so the people smart person has a very tricky task of making sure that they are staying focused and grounded and healthy internally. Another thing, for many people smart people, it's hard to be alone, and they develop a real ability to know and identify. And I think Christians do a great job of exploiting people smart people sometimes, and we forget to put our own oxygen mask on first before we assist others with their oxygen masks. And so for people smart people, there's often a need to learn to develop an ability to be quiet, to be still, and to be alone. Oh, I usually show a really great video then. Sorry, y'all. The next one is a really challenging way to be in this world, especially I think in the United States of America, and that is the self-smart person, or what the literature calls the intrapersonally smart person. This person is the kind of poet philosopher who, when you're sitting with them, they are with you, but they're not really with you. Do you guys know these people? They are your philosophy majors. They are kind of just deeply ensconced in this internal experience, and they experience everything else through the lens of, what is the personal relevance of this for me, or how does this tie in to me? And not because they are narcissists. To be self-smart is not to be a narcissist, but self-smart people tend to take their own experience and then say, if I have this experience, my human brothers and sisters probably also do. And these make some of the most amazing humanitarians. People who are self-smart are people like Gandhi, people like Mother Teresa. Any of you read Mother Teresa's journals that were published after her death? They really highlight part of what makes it hard to live in this world as a self-smart person. She dealt with massive, as a psychologist, I would say, massive amounts of depression. She dealt with intense doubt of God. She was deeply aware of her own shortcomings and aware of the way in which she was rich and the rest of the world was poor, which if you looked at Mother Teresa, you would not think of her as rich. And out of that then grew this huge empathic being that forced her. She could not live with the discordance inside, and so she felt compelled to go out and serve. And that is often this self-smart person. However, in our culture, oftentimes the self-smart person isn't given opportunities to serve or to express themselves. And if they, especially, these are people, if you are self-smart and you have parents who don't know about this stuff, you likely feel like, a left shoe on a right foot. It is a really different way of being. And if you're self-smart and want to talk about it more, come and talk to me, because I would love to help you find ways of really coming fully alive, being fully turned on. Self-smart people tend to take really strong ownership and responsibility for their own actions. They have to find personal relevance in material. I am a self-smart person, and I will tell you, I had this experience, and I don't even know if Connor remembers, but a few years back, I took my family to my high school, which was Ripon Christian High School, and my best friend from high school's daughter is sitting right back there. It's so good to see you. Anyway, I took them to Ripon Christian, and I showed them all around, and I showed them like the theater department, and I showed them where I took anatomy and physiology, because that was my favorite class, and I showed them all these different things. And then pretty soon, my husband was like, "Where's the history department?" And I literally said, "Oh, we didn't have to take history." And I realized Ripon Christian really is a bad school. Like, I didn't have to take history? So then I'm kind of reeling from this, thinking like, that is really not good. This is bad news. and so we're going through the rest of the day, and I take them to Marvell because I wanted to show them the Dutch area of the grocery store. And in walks Mr. T, who is our history teacher. And I knew he was the history teacher, and he walks right over to us, and I introduce him to my family, and he says to my children, "Oh, your mom was one of my favorite students." I sat in his classroom for 3 years, and I don't remember a single day of it. 3 years. And what I came to find out after this traumatizing experience was that Mr. T is a teacher who does not infuse history with a lot of personal relevance. And so it completely went over my head to the point that I don't remember 3 years of this. Please don't take this, take this to heart and find a way of making your learning relevant. So if this is you, you have to maybe work extra hard at finding the relevance in material and making it yours. You guys are going to love in contemplative practices or being still and pausing. You are going to love just pondering. You literally need time to get drunk on imagining and letting your mind wander. Literally. A self-smart person needs to, they will just come alive after they get through the discomfort of not having a screen with them. To just sit and let your mind wander or watch people is like Disneyland for a self-smart person. Just letting things flow. Spiritually smart, this is the newest kind of smart to be kind of uncovered by the research. And the spiritually smart person, in the research, they refer to this person as the existentially smart person. This is the philosopher's philosopher, where they are literally so up here that it's hard to even, do you guys have these people in your life? They're describing like lunch, and you're kind of going, I don't know what 5 of those words mean. Their experience is so heady and so other than. These guys literally experience most things as being related to the spiritual realm. They also really struggle because they need learning and they need experiences to be personally relevant and spiritually relevant. So if you are a spiritually smart person, you are going to struggle in all your gen ed classes because you're just going to be feeling like, why? Why am I here? And you guys need experiences that tap into that deeply meaningful and significant part of you. And in my experience, a lot of my clients who are spiritually smart struggle in traditional churches because they feel completely missed. There's nothing that's getting at the meaty, complex, messy stuff that they're thinking about and feeling about all the time. You guys need theological and philosophical inquiry. You need people who are even more philosophical than you to talk with, to help challenge you, to bring you along. And you guys need a lot of emphasis on meaning and depth. Then finally, our last one, and I save it for last usually because we have all kinds of screens and we can be interactive, and we aren't going to be able to be interactive today, but it's the one that all high school boys want to be. Which brings up another important point about multiple intelligences. Usually we have one that we would really like to be, and then we have the ones that we were really created to be. And sometimes there's a big discrepancy between those. Can you guys identify with that? Are you being able to kind of identify where you might fall, actually? Yeah. Okay. So most high school boys that I meet at some time in their lives of high school wish that they were music smart. The drummer or the guitarist. Music smarts is one that we are learning more and more about. And if you think you are music smart, I highly recommend that you do some inquiry around this, because there is so much amazing research happening right now around music and coming alive and being turned on. There's just some new research that came out 2 months ago that is, and it needs to be replicated to see if it really holds, but that shows that the center of the region of your brain that lights up when you are worrying, so when you are kind of ruminating on something, is not capable of being activated when you hum. How cool is that? That if you hum, you cannot worry neurologically. I think that is so profound that God created us with such cool complexity. Music smart folks learn with rhythms. They hear a rhythm in everything. Sometimes they have a hard time because they will hear a ticking clock and it will make it so they can't hear the professor or what's going on. They hear music in everyday sounds. These guys are the people who are making you nuts because they are constantly drumming on things. you guys have these people as roommates, or they're just constantly beating on things? They sometimes will. They will be literally incapable of learning or memorizing material unless they put it to music, which is great unless you're their roommate and they're constantly singing their notes. But it really literally may be the only way that they can keep things alive. Music smart people are around us. I mean, I think probably most of us can identify those folks. But these guys oftentimes are frustrated, kind of like the picture smart people, because they hear music in their head and they may not have the capability or the resources to make that music. Or they may crave something that they don't know exists yet. So if you are a music smart person, you need complexity in the way in which you stimulate your auditory senses. You also need variety in the kind of music that you expose yourself to. Don't just listen to one thing. And you may need also to just experiment and explore with rhythms and sounds as you learn.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.